The studio lights beamed down like spotlights in a theater, reflecting off the polished floor and glinting in the eyes of the eager audience. Everyone in the Kelly Clarkson show studio was buzzing with excitement. Cameras trained on the entrance as Khloe Kardashian made her way onto the stage. The audience erupted in applause, some standing, some waving cameras in the air. Kelly Clarkson, radiant in her signature smile, stood to greet her guest. "Welcome, Khloe," Kelly said warmly, extending her hand. "It's so good to have you here." Khloe smiled politely, her posture calm but slightly tense, a subtle tension visible to anyone watching closely. "Thank you for having me," she replied, settling into the plush chair across from Kelly. Cameras zoomed in on her hands, the slight tightening of her fingers, betraying nerves that contrasted with her confident public persona. The interview started smoothly. They discussed Khloe's latest ventures, her new fitness line, an upcoming reality series, and philanthropic projects. For a moment, it seemed like the typical celebrity interview. Polished, lighthearted, filled with laughter and mutual compliments. The audience was engaged, nodding along, some laughing at the witty banter between the host and her guest. But Kelly's eyes sparkled with curiosity, the journalist in her surfacing. "Khloe, I know people always ask you about your projects, but there's something I think a lot of viewers are dying to know," she began, leaning slightly forward. "Can you tell us what it was really like dealing with the public? Scrutiny about your family life, the headlines, the controversies. How did it really affect you?" Khloe's smile stiffened, her eyes narrowing slightly. The studio fell into a subtle hush. Even the crew seemed to sense the tension shift. "You know," Khloe said slowly, her voice measured but firm, "I came here to talk about my work, my growth, my journey, not to revisit things from the past that people have already decided stories about. I'm proud of what I've accomplished, and I think that deserves attention." The audience murmured, sensing that the conversation had shifted. Kelly, sensing the change in energy, smiled and tried to pivot. "Of course. But sometimes understanding the challenges behind the success can be inspiring for people." Khloe cut her off softly but firmly. "I get that, but there's a line. And I don't appreciate questions, framed in a way that feels like digging for drama. I've worked hard to move past certain narratives." There was a tense pause. The lights seemed brighter, the cameras closer. The audience suddenly aware that this was not going to be a routine interview. The chemistry on stage had shifted from amiable to charged. A quiet storm gathering momentum. Something unsaid hung in the air, a tension that could explode at any moment. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface now boiled over. Kelly, maintaining her professional composure, tried to steer the conversation back to lighter territory. "Let's talk about your business ventures. Your fitness line has been so inspiring to so many people." But Khloe's patience had frayed. "No, we're not going to gloss over it," she said sharply, her voice rising slightly. The audience sat in stunned silence, the sudden intensity gripping everyone in the studio. Microphones captured the sharpness in her tone, every syllable weighted with emotion. "You've built a career on people's curiosity about your life. Your mistakes and your family drama," Khloe continued, leaning forward, her eyes blazing. "And I'm not here for that today. I'm here for my work, my accomplishments, and my journey. If that doesn't fit the narrative, that's your choice, but it's not mine." Kelly's expression hardened slightly, a mix of frustration and incredulity crossing her face. "Khloe, I'm just asking questions that the audience wants answered." "That's what a talk show does. It explores stories. You know that going in." "I do know," Khloe snapped, her voice now resonating with intensity that echoed through the studio. "But I also know when enough is enough. I've answered questions about my family, my relationships, and my personal struggles hundreds of times. And I'm not here to perform someone else's narrative." The studio went silent. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances. The tension was palpable, almost suffocating. The audience leaned forward, some whispering, others frozen in anticipation. The cameras panned slowly across the room, capturing every minute detail, the twitch of a hand, the tightening of a jaw, the way Khloe's gaze seemed to pierce straight through Kelly. Then, suddenly, without warning, Khloe stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the polished floor, a sharp, jarring sound that seemed to mark the climax of the confrontation. The audience gasped, and cameras followed her every step as she strode purposefully toward the exit. Kelly sat frozen, her mouth slightly open, the professional composure slipping for a moment into sheer disbelief. The live broadcast captured the dramatic moment. Khloe walking off the set, leaving behind an atmosphere thick with tension and uncertainty. Crew members scrambled behind the cameras, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the scene unfold. The audience sat, stunned, the room echoing with murmurs and whispers, the sound of excitement and shock colliding. Backstage, chaos reigned. Producers, assistants, and crew members hurried to assess the situation, their voices overlapping in a frantic attempt to manage the unexpected. Social media was already exploding. Clips of Khloe's dramatic exit were uploaded in real time, garnering millions of views within minutes. Hashtags trended worldwide. The Khloe storms off. Clarkson showed drama. Unexpected exit. Fans debated endlessly about what had triggered the confrontation, and speculation ran rampant. Meanwhile, Clarkson returned to her chair, forcing a smile, her professional demeanor slowly reasserting itself. "Well," she said, her voice tight but measured, "that was unexpected." The audience laughed nervously, the tension still palpable, cameras lingering on her reaction. But even as she tried to maintain control of the broadcast, the energy in the studio had shifted irreversibly. Outside the studio, Khloe took a deep breath, the cool air hitting her face as she paused for a moment of reflection. She felt a surge of anger, yes, but also a sense of clarity. She had made a choice, not to be trapped by someone else's version of her story. She had taken control of the narrative in the only way she could, by walking away from it entirely. The night's events would dominate headlines and social media for days. Fans would debate, critics would analyze every word and gesture, and late-night shows would replay the footage endlessly. But Khloe didn't care. The storm she had walked out of wasn't just a television moment. It was a declaration of autonomy, a refusal to be defined by the curiosity or expectations of others. As the studio slowly emptied and the cameras went dark, one thing was certain: the story was far from over. Questions lingered, answers remained elusive, and the tension created in that small, brightly lit studio would echo through the world of celebrity media for weeks to come. The drama wasn't just in the exit, it was in the unresolved narrative, in the suspense that left millions of viewers craving the next chapter. Would Khloe return to face Kelly? Would there be a public reconciliation or a social media showdown? Only time would tell. For now, the suspense lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon. Impossible to ignore, impossible to forget.